The little boy didn't know the weight of his words, not really. He simply saw a grown man sitting alone on a bench on Christmas Eve with a paper cup gone cold and eyes that looked like they had forgotten how to hope. And so, with the uncomplicated courage only children carried, he walked over and whispered the line that would change all three of their lives, "Don't cry, mister, you can borrow my mom." Snow drifted softly over the park that evening, floating in slow spirals that made the world feel gentler than it truly was. The city around the park blazed with red ribbons and green lights, music carrying faintly through the chilled night air. But here, beside the frozen lake where laughter once lived, Callum Reed sat motionless on the cold iron bench, shoulders stiff beneath a tailored coat he barely felt. He had built empires, launched innovations, and sat atop a world that watched his every move. But none of it mattered on nights like this, not when old memories rose uninvited. Christmas Eve always found its way back to the boy he once was, 9 years old, forgotten in a group home, waiting for someone who never came. His social worker had said it gently, too quiet to compete with the twinkling lights in the hallway. Some kids get chosen early, some later, some not at all. He had stopped waiting after that. Stopped hoping. Stopped crying. Until tonight, when the quiet ache inside him felt raw again. A distant laugh snapped him from the past. He looked up. Across the path walked a woman in a thick wool coat and a little boy bundled in a puffy jacket with a knit hat tipped slightly to one side. The boy carried a warm paper bag, its sides darkened with grease. They stopped beside a bundled man under a threadbare blanket and handed him cookies with gentle smiles. Then the boy noticed Callum. He tugged his mother's coat, whispering something that made her turn and pause. Caution flickered across her face, but before she could guide him away, the child broke free. He trudged through the snow and stood in front of Callum, chin tilted up, voice tiny but brave. "Don't cry, mister, you can borrow my mom." The sentence hit Callum harder than winter wind. He blinked, stunned. He hadn't cried, not in decades, but somehow the boy had seen right through the polished armor. The woman hurried forward, cheeks flushed, but she didn't scold her son. She only offered an apologetic smile and held out a wax paper-wrapped cookie. "Merry Christmas," she said softly. "It's sweeter than necessary." Her voice held no pity. Just kindness. A warmth that felt unfamiliar to him. He took the cookie, fingers brushing hers for a fraction of a second. Even through gloves, he felt the tremor in his own hand. "Thank you," he said, the words quiet, almost foreign. She nodded and turned away, Jamie waving at him with wild sincerity. Then the two disappeared down the snowy path, leaving Callum holding a cookie that felt more real than the expensive gift box sitting beside him. He thought he would never see them again. But just as Elise and Jamie rounded the bend, he heard his own voice call out, hesitant, uncertain, but hopeful. "Wait, is there someplace nearby I could buy you two a hot chocolate?" The boy spun around instantly. "Yes. There's a cozy one around the corner." And that was that. Inside the small cafe tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop, warm air wrapped around them like a quilt, rich with cinnamon, pine, and chocolate. Jamie bounced to a small table beside a crackling fireplace. Elise and Callum followed more slowly, their breaths mingling in the amber glow. They sat. Jamie chattered. Elise poured hot chocolate from a silver thermos she had packed for their cookie rounds. She handed one cup to her son and one to Callum. When he accepted it, the steam curled up like something sacred. "It's been a long time since anyone poured something warm for me," he murmured. Elise didn't pry. She only smiled gently and said, "Jamie's terrible at ignoring people who look sad. He gets that from me." Their conversation drifted like the snow outside. The fire hummed, casting waves of warmth over the worn wooden table. Jamie's joy was contagious, his stories vibrant. Elise listened with quiet pride. And Callum. Callum watched the two of them with a growing ache, not of pain, but of longing for something he had almost forgotten existed. Connection. Their night together felt like a soft ribbon tying itself gently around his pulse. And yet, none of them knew how deeply their lives had already intertwined long before this moment. Days passed. Their paths crossed again. Elisa's theater program, the one she'd designed for children often overlooked, was blossoming. Until an anonymous blog post attacked her work, accusing her of plagiarism. Sponsors froze funding. Whispers spread. She did not defend herself. She simply returned to preparing scripts for the children. But one child, Jamie, mentioned it to Callum during a visit to his office. And that was enough. By morning, his legal team had dismantled the accusations. Proven her originality. Exposed the malicious author. Restored her funding. Protected her name. When she called him in disbelief, she whispered something she rarely admitted aloud. "I'm not used to being protected." And Callum, voice low, said, "I used to say that too. But no one should get used to being alone." Her tears fell then, soft and grateful. More days passed. Jamie went missing after a cruel comment at school. Elise panicked, heart unraveling as she searched. But Callum knew where a lonely child would go. The bench. He found Jamie curled on it, shivering, small, trying to understand the ache of belonging and the sting of being told he had no father to claim him. Callum wrapped him in his coat, held him close, whispered, "I'm here. And your mom is looking everywhere for you. You're not alone." Back at the apartment, Elise collapsed around her son, relief shaking her. And for the first time, she looked at Callum not as a stranger, or a quiet protector, but as a man whose presence steadied the room. Christmas Eve arrived. Elise and Jamie decorated their tiny, leaning tree. The apartment smelled of oranges and cinnamon. Then the doorbell rang. Callum stood there, snow in his hair, mismatched gloves on his hands, and a small but beautiful pine tree glowing with lights already wrapped around it. "I thought maybe your tree could use a little reinforcement," he said, unsure, vulnerable. Jamie grinned. "Mister, maybe you don't borrow anymore. Just stay." Callum looked at Elise. And she said it softly, with a smile that left no room for doubt. "Come in." They decorated together, laughter mingling with the soft hum of holiday music. Two trees stood side by side, one small, one new, both glowing. And somewhere between the cocoa and the stories, borrowing became staying. Then came the night of the theater showcase. Families filled the auditorium. The stage shone with handmade props. Callum sat in the front row, the printed program trembling slightly in his hand when he read the title of the final act. The Boy and the Borrowed Light. Written by Elise Grant. Starring Jamie Grant. Behind the curtain, Elise steadied her actors with gentle hands, fixing halos, smoothing costumes, whispering encouragements. In her quiet dedication, she glowed more brightly than any spotlight. The play unfolded with charm, wonder, and innocence. And then Jamie stepped into the final spotlight, voice small but strong. "When you're lost in the dark, you can borrow someone's light until yours shines again." Silence swept the room like snowfall. Callum's chest tightened, memory and emotion colliding. He looked toward the wings. Elise stood there, eyes shining, hands clasped, watching her son. She didn't notice him watching her, but he could not look away. She had been the borrowed light. From the moment she offered a cookie. From the moment her son offered his mother. From the moment she didn't ask why his hands trembled or why he stayed longer each time. The applause rose like a warm storm. Jamie bowed. The children beamed. Parents clapped. Elise wiped her eyes with a soft smile. But Callum didn't applaud at first. He just sat there, breath caught in his chest, heart pounding with recognition. He knew. After the show, when the crowd left and the lights dimmed, Elise found him standing near the edge of the stage, hands in his pockets, looking everywhere except at her. "You were wonderful," she said gently. "So were you." Silence stretched, delicate as snow fading on a windowpane. Then Jamie barreled into them, holding the paper lantern he used in the final scene. "Look, Mommy. Callum. I get to keep it." He handed it to Callum with the confidence only children possessed. "You can borrow it," the little boy said. But you have to stay long enough to give it back. The lantern glowed softly in Callum's hands. He looked at Jamie. Then at Elise. Then at the lantern. And something inside him, something cold and old and waiting, finally cracked open. Outside, snow kept falling. But inside that small theater, warm and quiet, 3 lights glowed together, one borrowed, one given, one found. The kind of light people spend lifetimes searching for. And that night, for the first time since he was 9 years old sitting alone on a bench, Callum Reed finally understood. He was not waiting anymore. He was home. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the hype button. Your support keeps the